Mao was birthed 3 years ago after their previous alter ego, Qrystal Reyna, sacrificed herself to the fire of creation. Asta Mao is a performance drag artist, focusing her performance in identity politics and social justice. She's also done stupid stuff in drag involving Nutella and a giant dildo. Asta's path to spirituality was found in the rooms of recovery. Her other alter ego, James, extends this spirituality by becoming a Glide member and has sung in the internationally renowned Glide Ensemble. This is Asta Mao.
Let's do it. So I grew up in the Philippines, right? Me, James, grew up in the Philippines, and in the 80s and in the 80s, right? And under the Marcos regime, and so that was those were the external factors. I didn't know that we were in martial law actually, but my parents did such a great job of like sheltering me from those type of political conversation. I think out of fear as well. They didn't want to get involved politically. I mean, if you're an enemy of Marcos, you will be dead, and or you would find yourself dead. And but yeah, the Philippines is very Catholic. I grew up Catholic, and that was my first introduction to God. God was a lot of in the Catholic tradition. There was a lot of shame and guilt, and a lot of the things that I did was trying to buy into heaven, right? To do good things so I can get to heaven, and well, early on too, I also, I knew that I was different. There was something that was so different. I mean, I was looking at boys and getting excited by them, and it was just really like that information, right? It's so counter to the narrative of my religion, the Christian religion, of man being with a woman, that type of thing. Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. So the messaging that I got was something was wrong with me, that I am abnormal, that I am going to hell. And the only thing that could get me out of hell is by becoming straight. And that was, otherwise I'm going directly straight to hell. And ever since I had that feeling of like, fuck that, it's like, I don't want to go to hell. And I started, disbelieving and finally unbelieving this concept, this idea that there is a God, right? And I started distancing myself away from religion, away from the church, and because I could not see myself thriving in an environment where I'm being constantly told that I'm a sinner, that I am unwanted, that I am abnormal, that I'm going to hell. And this, for someone that's like 6, 7, 8, 9, when I was discovering, my sexuality, and that was definitely like, I was beginning to feel shame around. Welcome back, Bonnie. I was beginning to feel shame, and it was something. The shame that I felt was something that I tried to like mask. I tried to dance around from, hide this shame that I felt was it was just, it didn't feel good, and I knew that if I keep going to Catholic Church, if I keep believing this God within the Catholic tradition, then I'm going to continue hating myself, and I knew that I knew that even when I was little, I knew that wasn't the path for me, and but like I said, I distanced myself to the point that I started disbelieving and unbelieving that my faith in God was definitely broken by what I was feeling internally. Because how can God love me if I'm a child of God? Why am I being sent to hell? I haven't done anything that's totally what I'm being told is that I am going to hell because I am unnatural, right? Whatever I'm feeling is unnatural. It's against God. And so I just, that disconnect between like a loving God and a punishing God, and just like idea of like, this God that's going to like, I just didn't feel like I didn't find safety and a home within the Catholic faith.
And when did that change for you? Did that change while you were young, or how did you?
No, not at all. I mean, I continue. I remember, when it was, I don't know when it became an option for me not to go to church anymore, but suddenly I told my grandma and my mom, like, I don't want to go to church. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay. and they were okay with it. And I stopped going. And, my mother's a very devout Catholic. And so, when I came out to her, that whole shame spiral got triggered. And
how old were you when you came out?
Well, I was 16. I was in high school still, relatively young. And, I grew up with this idea in the Philippines, the way that gays and trans people were being portrayed in the media was like, a butt of the joke that's ultimately like a sidekick that, is going to end up alone, that's going to be like being laughed at, and that there was no like this idea of being in a healthy relationship. So when I first came out to my mother, all of these ideas that they were also watching in the media came up, that, I'm a sinner, I'm going to be the butt of the joke, that there's no future for me. And that, with my mom, religion came up when I came out to her. And, again, it's like, this is how she grew up. This is these are the tools that she grew up with. And,
were you aware of that at 16? Were you able to see that?
No, obviously not. It's like, I was not aware of that. I was just like so heartbroken that my own mother and my own father, because, my father's a silent type, but, usually they're a one team. And, even though he wasn't saying anything when I was coming out, there was this feeling that he was supporting my mother. And, it was just really heartbreaking when my own mother tells me that I'm going to hell, and that, and she tried to like use the Catholic faith and what, the whole thing, like, love the sinner, not the sin. It's like, that whole like idea. I'm like, so I'm still a sinner. The way that you look at me, I'm your son, that I'm still a sinner. And that was heartbreaking, that no matter what I do, I could not be clean enough, whatever that meant, right? I could never be redeemable enough for heaven to gain entry, because I'm a sinner because of my homosexuality. And so that further created this big, wide, chasm between me and my faith, and like this concept of like, at that point, I was just like coming into my own political identity. I was, my political activism. I founded the first ever gay and lesbian club in my high school before GSA. This is pre-GSA. This is in the 90s, right? Mid-90s. And in San Jose. And this is a rough and tumble high school. So I was getting politicized, and I was getting, all these messaging that, being loud and proud and being queer and being just like, just in your face about my sexuality. And the messaging that I'm getting from home is like, you shouldn't talk about that. You're bringing family shame, and this is shameful what you're doing. And so just like, at that point, it was just a moment of like, fuck you, God. That's when my anger towards God actually started. It's just like, the fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? So that anger, just, I became an atheist, right? I became like a non-believer, and that, that carried on all throughout, most of my adult life. And it was just like, there is no God. like, you're a fool to believe in God. And that's where I was coming from. And, it was just really interesting how I came to my own spirituality at this moment. I don't know if that's a transition you want.
For sure.
But
Yeah, I was. Yeah. What I was like, how was that? How did you cope? That sounds like like God. What sounded like God was something in your life that really mattered. Your mother, obviously, and your father were people that you really cared about. How did you cope with that? I guess without having some of those things that you would normally turn to.
Yeah, there was definitely the way that happened naturally was that I distanced myself from God, and there was also distancing away from my family, right? I moved to San Francisco and in my early 20s, and and it's me, like, again, attaching myself to, like, out and proud queer folks, and just being, going out partying, going out drinking and using, and just creating my own sense of community, right? Because here I was kind of like, someone that's been cast out, not only out of family, but out of faith, right? And, not really cast out, because I also made a decision to, like, that faith is wrong and there's no God. And, but so I found my own, in a way, my own sense of community here, or my own community, which were people in their early 20s and up to mid 30s who love alcohol, who love drugs, and we were partying every weekend, and for a while, drinking, drugging, and sex was is what I was, praying to, right? Essentially.
Yeah. And you were getting your life that way, right? I mean, you were enjoying this, right? I mean, you were.
Oh yeah, totally. It's like, I thought I have a ride, at these type of, parties, and, going to the End Up, going to Club Universe, going to Pleasure Dome. Paula might know some of these clubs. Hi, Paula. But, so these type of things, I went to, I partied, and it fulfilled me for a while. It gave me this sense of community, of connection, of togetherness. There, I definitely feel like, dancing, in a warehouse can have its own spiritual moment, right? This idea of, like, community, this idea of, like, just dancing to the music that's so transcendent, that's so, like, amazing and majestic, and just, like, seeing people, like, swaying. That communal experience is very spiritual for me, right? And but at the end of those weekends, I find myself alone. The friends that I had made, the friends that I hung out with over the weekend, was not present from Monday to Friday, and then I would get new friends by the next weekend, or reconnect with previous weekend friends, right? And it was working for a while, honestly, and until it wasn't. Until it was just like, I remember, like, dancing and just, like, looking around, and it felt so lonely, despite the fact that I was surrounded by hundreds of men and women, with the men shirtless and dancing in the middle of the dance floor. But there was just this moment where I'm like, I'm still alone. I'm still feeling alone. I'm still feeling disconnected. I'm still feeling the sense of community that I thought I had was not sustainable, was not consistent throughout all of my life. It was just like a weekend, a location, a time, right? It was it
was starting to, like, lose its shine. It wasn't holding you, like, the weekends weren't holding you over to the next week full of that life you got from dancing or spinning. It just went away. How long did it take for you to get to that place where you started feeling alone? Was it always there?
I think was definitely in my 30s at this moment, where I was just like using and drinking, but I wasn't feeling the effect of like this community, this togetherness, this connection anymore. It was just like out of habit, out of like, here we go. It's happy hour. I guess 2 for 1. Let's go to Badlands. But that was it. It's like once 5 o'clock hits, I know exactly where to go. I know exactly who to text. And it's like, let's go 2 for 1. And by 7 p.m., every night that I was doing the happy hour, I was already blacked out, right? Because I haven't eaten dinner. I was downing those 2 for 1s like there's no tomorrow. And I was, blacked out. Or if I'm not blacked out, I would probably be, snorting meth in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Just to ask a question as well. I mean, in watching your film and kind of bringing up the topic of race, how was that playing out in your life as a younger person in San Jose, and then as you got into San Francisco?
That's a good question, actually. So a lot of this, the questions of race and the question of color, right, actually started way before immigrating to the United States, because growing up in the Philippines, the American dream was sold to us. This idea that America is the greatest thing in the whole wide world, right? So everything American is elevated. It's put on the pedestal, like this. And not only that, but the skin color of being an American is put on the pedestal, and the way that it's being distilled in the Philippines was part of an American colony at one point, but the way that that idea is being distilled, right, in the Philippine media is that all the lead actors and the lead actresses, newscasters, journalists, were all light-skinned, right? These are the people who are the heroes of the stories, even in the Philippine media when they're catering to majority brown folks there, right? But they're still elevating this concept that, to be fair, is that's highly valued, because I'm dark, and so the whole stigma of it being dark, darker skin in the Philippines, that I'm a farmer, that I've been working out in the sun all day long. Therefore, I'm poor. Therefore, I am part of the working class, or the poor working class. And, I'm not wanted. I'm not celebrated. I'm just a simple farmer that's working in the fields all day long. That's how my skin got dark, right? And and that's the distinction. So I would carry that over here, right? And this idea, this colonial idea that, again, it's all about, colonialism, and the idea that, the American import, right? They imported these ideas to the Philippines, and it's generations of people, Filipinos, of believing in this, right? And yeah, so it's really interesting that, at first I wasn't really I don't know whether it was being present for it, or I was just like so into my own colonial mentality, right, that I didn't see racism when I first came in here, right? Even when
you didn't notice it,
or? I didn't know that was what was happening, right? And it wasn't until I got into the dating sites and the dating apps. First, there was okay. This is before Grindr. There's AOL, right? There's AOL.
Way back. No, just joking.
Exactly. AOL chat rooms, right? And that's where I first started looking at this messaging back in the early mid 90s, where like people they're hiding behind anonymity, but they're also being so vocal about what they thought was a preference, right? This messaging like no Asians, no blacks, no femmes, and all this like anti-femme and anti-brown and black messaging. There were so much of it, right? And it continued, right? And that's a story that's been in the back of my mind. I'm like, I really want to share the story because I'm fairly certain I'm not the only one, because there have been articles written about it. There have been all these research that's been done around it and how toxic these apps are. These apps are toxic in so many levels, but racism is just like one of the most present things in these apps, and how that's like being allowed.
Hey y'all, it's me again, Bonnie Violet. I just wanted to take a second and thank my Patreon members. Patreon members are folks who contribute on a monthly basis anywhere from $3 to $150 a month to support the work of a queer chaplain. Big shout out to Victoria Thompson, Jason Brandt, Brandon Stanton, Kim Silva, Brandy McCarg, Randy Sandknot, Bob Kaiser, Joey Heckmeister, Violet Rhiannon, Gabriel, Jonathan, Petrick, and Todd Atkins Whitley. Thank you so much for your continued contributions. And if you're interested in joining the Patreon, just check the link in the description. Go to patreon.com/Bonnie Violet. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
And so I wanted to share that and tell that story. It's my story. It's a lot of my friends' story as well.
Yeah. I was, I was surprised that I never really noticed that. Like, I would notice that those things are written in chats and that sort of thing. And I never realized, I never thought about what it would be to be on the other side of that. Like, what if I was Asian? What if I was femme? What if I was femme? Huh? No. What if, I just never, for so long, I just never really thought past that. And getting to meet folks who are willing to share and talk about what that feeling was. And I think a lot of folks, even some folks that I friends, I don't even think they realize how much it impacts and that it impacts them. I've seen people respond to it. I've seen also people just kind of numb themselves out to it and almost just kind of accept that that's, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And for a while there, I was one of the few people who accepted it's, I even believe that it's just a preference, right? People are just going to have preference, and that's damaging, right? For me to believe that is super damaging to my own psyche. And yet I bought into it, but it took a while for me to really unlearn and really identify. I'm like, no, that's not just a preference. That is racist, and that is grounded in exclusionary idea that white is the best mate for you. And and I had to do a lot of self-examination, Bonnie. And for a while there, I was also dating exclusively white. And that was the extent of my internalized racism, that I did not find other Asian men sexually desirable. Because I believed in it. And what was the message?
Marvin White would love to know if Asta has an altar at home and if they could say what's on it and where the spiritual center of their home.
Well, I live with 3 other folks in the mission. So my spiritual center now is definitely my bedroom. And my practice has been a lot of, I don't have an altar per se, but I do have a spiritual practice that I like to do. I do meditation, and I also do a lot of gratitude. I do a gratitude list every day. And usually I just sit on my bed and have this conversation with my higher power. And I say higher power because, I really want to continue. This idea of higher power was first introduced to me in the rooms of recovery, right? And that's how I regained and recommitted my life, my spiritual life. It was through the rooms of recovery, this idea that I get to have my own concept of my higher power, and they can be he, she, they, them, right? It doesn't matter if my higher power have feathers, tits or beards, right? Or all three. And and I can cultivate that spiritual higher power, and I can continue like to practice my spiritual practice. And yeah, so right now my spiritual center is my bedroom, where I get to have all of me and be who I am, and be, communing with my higher power, with God, at this moment.
Right. And when did drag come into the play, or what's your relationship with drag?
Oh my God. So drag is such I'm an artist, right? And, I sing, dance, act, and I make films, but actually drag is a recent addition to my, creative tools, and my storytelling tools. And I got into drag when I first got into sobriety 6 years ago. So this is all new, or new-ish, in a way. I have not been performing for decades. It's like, in fact, I have this like, I thought at one point drag was just like, it's clown. It's, and for some, drag is clown, and I love it. But it's just like, it's not really me, and blah. So I had like this derision towards drag. But once I got into recovery, and this idea of being open-minded to what can happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, why am I so resistant towards this idea of drag? Let's see what happens if I get into it. And 6 years later, it's an amazing part of my storytelling creative process. And it's definitely enhanced, and definitely connected me with, continue to connect me with this idea of that, not idea, but connected me to my higher power more deeply, right? And
it sounds like it's almost like a full circle moment where
I
like you're
know.
back to this space of like embracing a God concept, embracing yourself, and even maybe playing with these ideas of gender that sounded like it was a challenge for you when you were younger.
For sure. And, looking back at it, and, as you pointed out, it's like, from becoming a sinner to like this amazing spiritual practice I get to have today, where I'm like, I can be with God and in God at this moment, that I don't have to feel shame and guilty, or feel like I'm a sinner, that and that's the reason why I also became a Glide member, because I knew how open and accepting, and not just tolerance, and not just accepting, but it's just like Glide is so into everyone and everything, no matter where you're coming from, whether you're earning so much money, or just another person, an unhoused individual walking from the street, that there is refuge, that there is sanctuary at Glide, that that I can walk in anytime where I am at any point in my life, right? And be welcomed and feel welcomed, and be part of this amazing community that's all about service. And that's what I love about Glide, is like how grounded it is in community service, especially, the neighborhood and the Tenderloin that they continue to service.
Right. I mean, what kind of church would sponsor this? I mean, they got to be pretty amazing, right?
I know, it's crazy. It's really cool to like be part of this, and I miss going to Glide in person, and I definitely want to. I miss it so much. I miss singing in the Glide Ensemble as well, and definitely looking forward to the day when we're allowed to do it again.
Come back and touch and hold hands and sing "We Shall Overcome."
Yeah, exactly.
And
I love that.
Asta Mao. So how did you come up with your name?
Okay. So it's a Pornhub search term.
I know, right? I guess we don't have to say it out loud. We can let the audience figure it out.
Yeah.
Asta Mao.
Exactly.
Enough.
Say it really fast 3 times in a row, and you'll get it.
You'll get it. I was saying your name, so like I was saying it, I was worried that I was saying it wrong. And then when you told me what it meant, I was like, yeah, it's been fun to come play with you. one of the reasons why I really wanted you to be someone that I interviewed and I talked to is that you've been very inspirational to me in my life. And like the last year, I guess a year or two ago, I started noticing that you were just doing shit. Like it was just like you were deciding that, I don't know, you were going to do films, and you were like going to dance classes, and you were like doing drag, and you were having maybe, you know, like me, we are having some conflict with people who also do drag, you know, kind of fitting into that culture. But you seem to just kind of keep going, and it definitely inspired me that you were able to kind of just like do so much.
Yeah, so thank you so much, and you are an inspiration to me too, Bonnie. And I love the fact that you have grown into this amazing performer and also amazing activist, and the fact that you've integrated your own spirituality and make it available to drag queens in the community, and inviting them to share their own sense of spirituality. And yeah, part of that process for me the past 2 years have been really it's been a practice of discernment, right? Especially with what I want, what I need, and the people that I want to support my life with, right? And people are telling me who they are all the time, and I finally began to listen. And what it boils down to is go where the love is, go where the love and fun is. If it's no longer loving and fun, thank that person or thank that situation. You have served me, and I'm letting you go. And that's what I found at that moment. I'm like, why do I keep going back to these people who doesn't believe in the same values and concepts and ideas that I believe in, and trying to get their validation, and for what?
Right. Like to be one of the cool kids or something, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely relate to that. Sometimes I feel like I'm like a 9-year-old girl just wanting the world to like me, you know, and get mad when I don't get picked for the team or whatever. But it's just been really great to watch you kind of take on the world and take on those challenges. And I've learned a lot just watching you.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
For sure. So we're like drag, spirituality. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we want to talk about that we didn't get to.
Let's see. Maybe we can open it up to Q&A.
Do we have any questions on Facebook or in the Zoom room? Our special VIPs in the Zoom room.
Specially created for you folks tonight, so you better put some Q&A.
Yes, just for you. As we wait for a couple questions, I didn't get a chance to talk a little bit about our sponsors. I just kind of like briefly said it, but wanted to thank Glide for supporting us, providing this event, as well as the Glide Pride team. Also, this is a free event, and there's no charging. I meant to say this earlier too, but there should be, if you're in Facebook, there's a pen at the bottom of the screen, and you can click on that, and you can, we are looking to collect donations on behalf of the transgender district, which is located in the Tenderloin here in San Francisco. And it's the first legally recognized district of its kind, found and run by Black trans women. And it's just, they're doing really beautiful stuff. So there's a GoFundMe link. If you want to click on there and give them $10-$20, you know, like this is kind of like going to the movie, right? And then also, you know, tip your drag queen, tip your performer. So you can also tip Asta Mao by clicking that as well. And it looks like, make sure when putting comments in, I don't see it. I think they're trying to get us a message, but I don't see one. Yes. All right. So one of the things I wanted to bring up too, now I'm not checking my notes. So dance, what's your, like dances? I always see you, I always see on Instagram or whatever that you're dancing and stuff. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, we got a good question, but let me talk about dance for a second, and then we'll go to the question. Um, so dance have been part of my life ever since I was little. I think dance is my first love and continues today. Dance have also, and this might answer some question. Dance has also saved my life numerous times. And what I'm saying is that, um, great question, Marvin. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Do you want me to read those questions out loud real quick?
yeah,
Or no?
sure.
Yeah. So, Amy Springer Ox, how do you find faith in your darkest times? And Marvin asks, how does the shelter? Okay, so those are two different things. So let's continue about dance.
Yeah. So,
I'm sorry.
yeah, it's all good. So dance have saved my life. At the age of 33, yesterday. At the age of 33, I suffered a stroke from meth binging, from binging on meth on the weekend, and that was really difficult for me because I've been dancing all my life, and suddenly I could not dance. I could not balance. But I used dance to recuperate, to recover, and to get all of my most of my movements back. And and I continue to dance. I had a motorcycle accident, but 4 years ago, I'm no longer riding motorcycles, so you can all rest easy. And I used dance again to recover from that. So, I love dancing. I actually was classically trained in ballet and jazz, but now I do mainly hip hop, and I love the cardio aspect of it. But I also love the fact that, you know, that it's celebrating black and brown bodies, that is centered within the black and brown artistry, and that that we continue to that I continue to like really be exposed to great black artists and black musicians that I get to dance to, and just having this like sense of community whenever I hang out or used to hang out in that studio. Now, shelter in place question, and then I'll do the darkest moments question. I've been dancing throughout this whole time in shelter in place inside my own bedroom, right? I take classes, Zoom classes. Yeah. And I love being able to take Zoom online classes. And I'm actually have done a lot more dancing while sheltered in place because obviously nothing to do except dance. Just dance. And but yeah, so that's how creatively is what I've been filling my time with. It's I do a lot of writing. I just finished a screenplay during Shelter in Place because I wanted to my first ever, and I finished my first draft. I'm really proud of that moment.
Congrats.
Because I set a goal, and I kept it consistent, and I followed through, and and again, it's a really interesting process for me. And again, it's a story that's like, international, that happens in the Philippines and United States, and it's just have this diaspora feel to it. And it's again my story I wanted to tell, right? And I wanted to share, and so I do. Yeah,
I was gonna say I can't wait to read it or see it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll be glad to give it to you and like have you read it and get notes from you.
Yeah,
and
like shelter in place for some drag artists. I've been like some folks in this time in shelter in place. I've heard a lot of people, their creative juices moving, and then I've heard a lot of people who also were super creative who now are like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with. I just don't have the same energy or whatever. Has it changed for you? Is it more or less?
I think it's, for me, sheltered in place have definitely shown me what's super important in life.
Yeah.
And for me, art is important in my life. And so that's why I'm super energized while sheltered in place. And partly the reason, and here, it's a joke, but it's true. Partly the reason why I flourish and thrive while being sheltered in place this whole time is because I don't have to deal with the daily microaggression and racism I used to deal with constantly, right? I don't have to like watch out for like this type of interactions. I can actually like, for the first time, I can focus on art without all these external trauma triggers that's happening on the daily before COVID, right?
It kind
So
of
it
sets you
actually,
off. Yeah.
exactly. So it gave me this like, you know, I was literally sheltered from all of those violence, those, you know, toxicity, racism, microaggression. And I was just like, yeah, then it totally opened me up creatively. And that's, it's been, for me, it's been really, really amazing to be sheltered in place. And
Yeah. John and Brett is asking, how might or does drag assist to shake off the shame that you mentioned feeling? Shake it off.
yeah, so drag is all about, you know, it's performance, right? It's all about like owning and becoming larger than life. And this is, you know, being in drag is all about like going 110 in whatever your identity is. So if I'm Asta Mao, I'm like creating this really amazing identity character, right? That's super, super transgressive, that's super, you know, that's a social activist. And but it's just a moment where I'm like, when it came to my shame and guilt as a, you know, as a queer individual, you know, it's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with this, right? Drag is giving me this permission to like go for it, show up as fully, as full and authentic as you can be, even when you're not in drag.
Right. Well, a lot of the numbers that I've seen you in drag, you often end up not having clothes on. How is that?
Just a little bit.
Right. Has that, you know, has it helped you feel better about like like for me, I know like I feel most pretty and like I feel better about my body and my look.
Yeah.
When you know, when I'm all done up, like does something for you, and I tend to show a lot. I tend to show a lot more when I'm in drag too.
That's a great question, Bonnie. For me, drag is all about like I really want to highlight the what is it, the push and pull of drag, right? That at one point I get to create a character, but I also want to strip down the character, right? To like show you the most vulnerable part of what being in drag looks like. And for me, the nakedness of the performance and my literal nakedness during a performance is me at my most vulnerable moment, right? And I wanted, you know, again, it's like, I love the glitzy drag. I love the over the top drag. I love the whole like drag. And for me, on my art, I not respond, but I feel most true when I'm most naked.
Right. How more true does it get, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I think we're rounding up to about that hour mark. Well, we are about that hour mark. So I wanted to thank you for coming on the show tonight.
I felt bad we didn't answer one question.
What didn't we answer? I think it was just Marvin's.
How do you? Hi, Marvin. There's a question from Amy. How do you find faith in your darkest times?
Oh, okay,
that's a good question, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I could argue that I am in my darkest time right now. The fact that you know, I have no job, or that I'm not I do have a job. I started a small business, but you know, the clients have not come in yet, and I'm scared. You know, but what's really amazing during this time is that God always provides, right? God always provides no matter what. And I continue to have that faith. You know, it's like, I'm going to be taken care of no matter what happens. Pandemic or no pandemic, job or no job. If I just continue to show up, if I just continue to like, you know, show up for what is happening rather than running away or checking out or, you know, drinking and using again, you know, I think faith for me is what's guiding me at this moment. And even, in my darkest times, and I'm really grateful, my darkest times lately is just this. It's just like, I have, I'm still, looking for clients, and that's okay. And,
Right.
and again, it's like, I'm okay right here, right now. I'm okay.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
Everything else is cherry. And that's, for me, that's faith.